4 on Nashville's Channel 2.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. The South American nation of Chile is still reeling this evening from the powerful aftershocks of last night's earthquake. At least 124 people died in Chile's worst earthquake in 25 years. Nearly 2,000 more people have been injured, and thousands are homeless. ABC's John McWethy is in Santiago.
It was still daylight when the earthquake hit. Streetlights swayed, clouds of dust rose from the hills, landslides blocked roads. And in the cities, as the sun went down, buildings crumbled, fires broke out. In an area of several thousand square miles, a night of terror began for millions.
Everybody was screaming because it was a hard earthquake. It sounded awful.
I was just going to say, I thought it might jolly well kill us.
The center of the earthquake was just 25 miles off the coast of Chile, adjacent to where 80% of this country's population is concentrated. In Santiago, Chile's largest city and its capital, electricity, gas, water, and phones were out most of the night. Santiago, in darkness, was cut off from the rest of the country, and for hours the country was cut off from the rest of the world. Thousands of injured poured into the hospitals, and as communications were restored, the official death toll continued to rise. Chile's President Pinochet rushed back to Santiago and imposed a midnight to 5 a.m. curfew with orders to shoot looters on sight. People abandoned their houses in the darkness, sleeping in parks and streets for fear their houses would collapse. And by morning, it was clear that many of the homes had collapsed, particularly those in the older and poorer neighborhoods. And many that were not destroyed outright were no longer safe to live in. Churches, generally among the oldest structures, suffered terrible damage. 5 people were killed in one church where the earthquake hit during a Catholic Mass. Though most of Chile has returned to normal today, the aftershocks are continuing. All day, tremors have shaken the city of 4 million, tens of thousands of whom now have only the street as a home. John McWethy, ABC News, Santiago, Chile.
And now Mother Nature here at home. The National Weather Service first saw it when it was forming over the Pacific. And today, one of the biggest winter storms in a long time hit much of the Midwest. The 2 states most severely affected have been Minnesota and South Dakota. In South Dakota, it is the worst general storm since the 1960s. With a roundup of who and what has been affected, here's ABC's Chris Bury.
Winter telegrammed a March message to the Midwest. It's not over yet. The worst storm of the year dumped up to 2 feet of snow across the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. In South Dakota, the icy roads were so dangerous, drivers were told to get off or get arrested. Morning rush hour was a mess throughout the Midwest. Airports in Minneapolis, Milwaukee, and Detroit were shut down most of the day. The snow was everywhere, even on the seats of the Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan, home of Detroit's Pistons and Lions. Parts of the fabric roof ripped under heavy snow. No one was hurt, but in Evansville, Indiana today, firemen dug out the bodies of 3 construction workers killed when high winds blew down a concrete wall.
Walk next to the building. Ice is falling. Walk next to the building.
In Chicago, it seemed as if the sky was falling. Pieces of ice tumbled off downtown buildings. In Michigan, 50-mile-an-hour winds pushed chunks of ice into lakefront homes. South of Detroit, Lake Erie spilled into the streets, forcing 50 families from their homes. Thanks to the storm, thousands of school children got the day off, perhaps the only ones who seem to enjoy this latest blast from the winter that won't go away. Chris Bury, ABC News, Chicago.
Later in this broadcast, a bullet is fired into the home of Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun. More violence in southern Lebanon. And just north of the California border, the residents of Pine Creek fighting to keep their town in the Beaver State.
This is World News Tonight, brought to you by Anbesol.
How fast does Anbesol relieve toothache pain? Before you can say.
Anbesol.
How fast does Anbesol relieve painful gum irritation? Before you can say.
Anbesol.
When your mouth hurts, Anbesol's pain-killing ingredients relieve minor mouth pain on contact. And Anbesol keeps on relieving for hours. How fast does Anbesol stop teething pain? Before he can say.
Anbesol.
Anbesol in gel or liquid stops minor mouth pain before you can say Anbesol.
Hey, Coach, we heard you got a new refrigerator. Where's the water?
White Westinghouse put the ice here and the water here. Help yourself.
Where's the bologna?
Right there in the deli tray.
Where's the pop?
There are a couple of big bottles in the door.
Where's the lettuce? And tomatoes.
In the crisper with all that other fresh stuff.
Where's the butter? Where's the jelly? Where's the bathroom?
White Westinghouse. We're making things better for you.
We learn today of what may have been intended as an attack on Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun. Last Thursday night, someone fired a bullet into his home. Here's our law correspondent, Tim O'Brien.
It happened just after 10 o'clock Thursday night. A 9-millimeter bullet shot through the living room window of the Blackmun's home in Arlington, Virginia, outside Washington. The justice reportedly had just left the room, but Mrs. Blackmun was showered with glass and shaken up, although not otherwise hurt. No one has claimed responsibility for the shooting. The FBI, which recovered the bullet from a chair, says it's making no assumptions about the motive. But there have been plenty of threats against Justice Blackmun since he wrote the court's landmark 1973 decision legalizing abortion.
I think you can think of any name to call someone, and I've been called it, butcher of Dachau, murderer.
Court sources say the threats against Blackmun have been growing in viciousness and in number. The most recent, a letter with a New York postmark in which the writer threatened to blow the justice's brains out. Security was beefed up at the court last October following other similar threats. On his frequent afternoon walks around the court, Blackmun now is usually accompanied by a bodyguard. Blackmun was on the bench this morning, and the court itself has maintained at least the appearance of tranquility, despite what seems to be the growing threat of lawlessness from those who oppose the way the justices view the law. Tim O'Brien, ABC News at the Supreme Court.
There were two important rulings from the Supreme Court today. The justices held that if you make a confession, and only after that are advised of your rights, a subsequent confession can be used against you. The justices also said that a Vermont attorney does have the right to practice law in New Hampshire, and that is a ruling which could affect residency laws for a number of professions in a number of states. A new round of arms talks between the U.S. and the Soviet Union is set to begin next week in Geneva. And against that background, President Reagan today sent a new report to Congress, urging Congress to move ahead with the MX missile program. The president called the MX, again, an essential element of America's arms control strategy. Here's our White House correspondent, Sam Donaldson.
President Reagan has used a number of arguments over the years to try to convince an increasingly reluctant Congress to continue funding the MX missile. Tying it directly to the new Geneva arms negotiations is only the latest.
As talks begin, each House of Congress will cast a vote that will directly, perhaps dramatically, affect the outcome at Geneva. A negative vote in either House would undercut our negotiators and send a message to Moscow that America is an irresolute and divided nation whose divisions can be exploited at Geneva. That must not happen.
With 21 MX missiles already paid for, Congress last year held up $1.5 billion for another 21 missiles pending the new vote. The president today told Congress the release of that money is essential, but he also acknowledged that putting the MX in Minuteman holds as planned will not appreciably reduce U.S. land-based missile vulnerability, which was one of the main reasons for building the MX in the first place. Opponents today called the president's Geneva gambit a last gasp argument.
This is the only way they can win this vote. This system is gone on its merits.
Because the weapon just doesn't fill the function for which it was designed, that is to deal with the vulnerability of the Minuteman silos in which it is now to be put.
Meanwhile, House Majority Leader Jim Wright announced the House would not send a delegation of observers to Geneva as the White House had requested because administration officials had called it a junket, complaining members were taking their wives.
But I think my colleagues have the feeling that if they're going to be used by the administration, they don't want to be abused by the administration at the same time.
Wright may well change his mind and go to Geneva, although White House officials really don't care. What they really want is to keep the MX alive. And the Geneva gambit, last gasp argument or not, could do that, at least for a while longer. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, the White House.
The former Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Thayer pleaded guilty today to lying about stock market dealings. When he was a member of various corporate boards, Thayer gave inside information to a stockbroker, information that netted them and Thayer's mistress $1.5 million in profits. Thayer quit his Pentagon job when the charges were made public last year, and the maximum sentence is 5 years in prison and/or a fine. The White House said today it will look into reports that Deputy Chief of Staff Michael Deaver and other members of a White House advance team bought 9 expensive German cars at discounts when they were in West Germany last week. They were there to lay the groundwork for President Reagan's trip to Europe in May. and they reportedly used diplomatic passports to get 25% discounts on the BMWs. In our next segment, Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon. The violence and the bloodshed go on.
Bigger engines were easy on oil, but today's smaller, higher revving engines are tougher. They begin to break down on oil's viscosity within 1,500 miles. That's why there's Castrol. Tests show Castrol suffers no significant loss of viscosity even after 5,000 miles. So use Castrol, because if you make things too hard on your engine could make things hard on you. Castrol, engineered for smaller cars.
Chili burger, burn it!
Nothing like lingering over a nice, lazy, leisurely lunch. And for that upset stomach trouble that can come from eating on the double, there's new chewable Alka-Mints from the fast relief people of Alka-Seltzer. It would take both a Tums and a Rolaids to get more strength than one Alka-Mints. No leading tablet works better. So, after your next relaxing meal,
Mash and mash!
there's new Alka-Mints. With a strength of 2, it's the one to chew.
Renault introduces 8.5 in 85, America's lowest factory financing. That's 8.5% on Renault Alliance with sedan comfort for 5. 8.5% on Renault Encore, built in America with European design. And 8.5% on Alliance Convertible, America's lowest price convertible. 8.5 in 85, America's lowest financing on all Renault models.
The one to watch, the one to watch, the one to watch.
Renault.
In overseas news, once again, a terrorist bombing has brought sudden death to southern Lebanon. This time the target was a mosque at a Shiite religious center in a small village. Details from ABC's Mike Lee.
This videotape was shot with an amateur camera shortly after the booby trap bomb exploded on the upper floor of the Shiite religious center in Ma'arakeh, South Lebanon. At least 12, possibly 15 were killed and dozens were injured. Pandemonium broke out among the villagers. Among the dead were 2 high-ranking leaders of the Amal Shiite militia, including 25-year-old Mohammed Saad, who'd been active in planning guerrilla attacks against Israeli troops in southern Lebanon. The bomb went off less than 48 hours after the Israeli army had raided the village of Ma'arakeh and entered a number of buildings in a security sweep. Lebanese Shiite leaders claim the Israelis planted the bomb. The name of the town, Ma'arakeh, means battle, and with the Shiites believing that Israel is responsible for this disaster, the cries of Ma'arakeh may soon spread to other areas still occupied by Israeli troops in southern Lebanon. Mike Lee, ABC News.
This is Bob Zelnick. While acknowledging their troops had conducted extensive recent operations in Ma'arakeh and other Shiite villages, Israeli officials tonight denied categorically any role in the blast at the village mosque.
Israel had nothing to do with this blast. This is not a way Israel is combating terror.
But today, in and around the port city of Tyre, more evidence of the iron fist Israel has brought down on South Lebanon's Shiites. Israeli patrols fan across the landscape. They've stepped up raids on villages where suspected Shiite fighters live. Mass roundups. House-to-house searches for weapons. Often, this is the result. Homes reduced to rubble.
Unless there will be no terrorist action on their side, there will be a lot of suffering to them.
For Israel, the danger is that their iron fist will provoke still more Shiite retaliation, perhaps reaching the Israeli side of the border. The likelihood is that Lebanon Shiites will overwhelmingly blame Israel for planting the bomb at Ma'arakeh. After 30 months of occupation, there's no credibility between the two communities, no goodwill, only the desire for vengeance. Bob Zelnick, ABC News, Tel Aviv.
Still overseas, the year-long strike by British coal miners is now over. Miners will return to work in most places tomorrow, although some Scottish miners and those in Kent in southern England say they will continue to stay off the job. As ABC's Barry Dunsmore reports, the Mine Workers Union has emerged as a big loser.
But the miners were not united, and their strike to prevent the closure of coal mines on economic grounds has collapsed. Today, many mining communities went through a last spasm of defiance before returning to work tomorrow without an agreement and deeply divided. Much of the bitterness stems from the violence of the strike. Mass picketing brought out mass police lines. 2 people were killed. Britain was shocked. In the end, the violence cost the miners much-needed public support while encouraging Prime Minister Thatcher in her tough negotiating line.
Yes, I hope we'll never see again in Britain some of the terrible scenes we witnessed. I didn't think we could ever see them here, but we have, and now I hope it's over.
Without exception, British newspapers today depicted Miners' Union President Arthur Scargill as the big loser, most accepting the Thatcher government's contention that it had fought and defeated the enemy within.
It was about the whole way in which Britain was going to move forward, whether it was going to look back or look forward. To that extent, it was a necessary war. It had to be fought and it had to be won.
But Marxist Scargill is not conceding defeat, and his bitterness toward those who did not support him burns with the same intensity which split this country after the last great strike in 1926.
50 years on, people remember those who betrayed the Union. No, it's not going to be for a while. It's going to be to the end of time.
One of the strongest and proudest labor unions has lost one of the most violent and the longest major strike in British history. That is bound to leave some very deep scars in the British body politic. Barry Dunsmore, ABC News in the Kent coalfields.
Our commentator George Will is with us this evening, and he has some comments about unions on both sides of the Atlantic. George?
Peter, Mrs. Thatcher obviously has been very lucky in the enemies that history has handed to her. First the Argentine generals, and now a man like Mr. Scargill. But this is a night perhaps for Americans to think how lucky we are in the kind of labor unions we have. British unions are, strictly speaking, many of them, reactionary. They don't believe in economic growth. They're afraid of change. They want to argue about how to carve the economic pie. American unions believe in growth by and large and want to bake a bigger pie. It's a mystery to me, Peter, why so many conservative American businessmen complain about American unions. The principal effect of American unions has been to increase the purchasing power of American men and women. What do they buy? They buy what conservative American businessmen are selling. In the 1930s, we had a great many radical unionists in this country. Now, thanks to the unions, they have the money to buy a home in the suburb, maybe a cottage by the lake, a camper to drive to and from their home and their cottage in.
George, let me ask you a question. How much do you think this has to do with the fact that we are one class, essentially, in this country, and Britain is really still divided very much into 2 classes?
I think it has a great deal to do with that, Peter, but again, I think American labor unions get a large share of the credit for making us a middle-class country.
George, thank you very much indeed. Another blast today, and when we come back, the California asbestos trial, billions of dollars at stake, and a giant auditorium for a courtroom.
When a hurricane this strong hit Houston, Houston found out you need an insurance company this strong behind you. Within hours, an Aetna task force was coming, over 100 strong, from round the country, assigned to the hardest hit, paying 1,000 claims a day and more, going the extra mile to put the people, the companies, the schools back in business.
Aetna, we're glad we met you.
I can't find...
I'll be home at 10. 9.
Come away to a new High Point and relax. High Point coffee helps smooth out the rough edges, smooth in relaxation, gently washing away not only caffeine, but also bitterness that can interrupt your coffee pleasure. Relaxing moments don't last forever.
Mom, I missed the bus.
New High Point smooths out rough edges, smooths in relaxation.
For the 3rd year in a row, the winner of the Crawford County Hop Calling Contest is my own dear wife, Dottie Mason.
Hi, I'm Merlin Olsen, here to tell you how your FTD florist can help to make someone's big day even better. With the Tickler Bouquet, a fun, inexpensive way to please someone you think is pretty special.
For you, my little songbird.
The Tickler Bouquet from FTD. It says so much and costs so little.
It's a wonderful feeling when you start the day with Yoplait breakfast yogurt.
Falling in love again. Oh, yes, it's true.
Breakfast yogurts, walnuts, wheat grain, and real fruit.
What am I to do? I can't help it.
They're so chewy and substantial. Yoplait breakfast yogurt, now in 2 new flavors, sunrise peach and strawberry banana.
Falling in love again.
It sounds like a Hollywood spectacular, even though it is being held in San Francisco. The trial began today in a giant lawsuit filed by asbestos manufacturers against their insurance companies. As ABC's Ken Kashiwahara reports, it will be a trial with some mind-boggling proportions.
The trial is so large it is being held in an auditorium converted into a courtroom. Involved are 5 asbestos manufacturers, 65 insurance companies, more than 100 lawyers, and billions of dollars in injury claims. At issue is who must pay asbestos victims, the manufacturers or insurance companies, and the question of when liability begins for a disease that takes years to develop.
Insurance policies say they will cover an insured for claims for bodily injury. The question in this case is, when does bodily injury occur?
To handle what is believed to be the largest single trial in California history, workers completed the $200,000 courtroom conversion over the weekend, installing some innovative electronic devices. How, for example, does the judge recognize a lawyer he can barely see?
There's going to be a light system that is connected to my bench, and when an attorney wants to be recognized, he will push a button.
Meanwhile, outside the courtroom today, asbestos victims, many of them former workers, protested the fact that while lawyers argue over who pays, victims continue to suffer.
This is an awfully way to die.
People are basically, a lot of them are dying before any compensation can even be given to them at all.
Indeed, the trial is expected to last at least a year, with appeals taking several years beyond that. Ken Kashiwahara, ABC News, San Francisco.
In tonight's Money Matters, a corporate takeover bid called off. Financier Carl Icahn today agreed to drop his effort to acquire Phillips Petroleum. As our business correspondent Stephen Ogg reports, Icahn was not the first to get in on this new game of takeover monopoly. It is played for millions.
This is oil man T. Boone Pickens. He was the first to try to take over Phillips Petroleum. He started quietly buying Phillips last fall when the stock was about $40 a share. He went public last December, and the price shot up to about $55. But the management didn't like it, so they bought him off for $53 a share. Pickens didn't get the company, but he did make $89 million on the stock he'd bought. Now enter Carl Icahn, another corporate raider. He sees himself as a champion of the stockholder, a man who keeps corporate managers on their toes.
The managements, not all of them, but a lot of them go around with their jet planes, and they go around to their hunting lodges. I mean, they live like the nobility of old, but they don't own these companies. Again, I'm not doing it because I'm Robin Hood. I'm doing it because of the financial, absolutely because I want the financial gain, but I think it's a very good thing that I do, and more people should do it.
Phillips management didn't want to sell out to Icahn either, and the settlement today effectively buys him off for $25 million, technically reimbursing him for the cost of his takeover attempt. So who won and who lost in all of this? One big winner, as we said, is T. Boone Pickens with his $89 million. So were other investors who got in early and sold out when the stock was going up. One big loser was the company itself. It cost them more than $100 million just to fight off Pickens and Icahn, and now they face billions of dollars more in their plan to buy back half their stock so other raiders won't try to do it again. Still, with millions, if not billions, to be made from takeover fights, this is one high-stakes game that is sure to continue. Stephen Ogg, ABC News, Washington.
Stephen, on Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrials closed down almost 10 points. Trading was just over 100 million shares. When we come back, Pine Creek, Oregon, just north of the California border. They want to keep it that way.
Your days go by fast. Your work never seems to end. So much to do and only one of you. Whirlpool knows the value of your time. We're making your world a little easier. Whirlpool makes it easier for you. How do you do all the things you do when every day so much depends on you? Whirlpool knows the value of your time. We're making your world a little easier. Whirlpool makes it easier for you. We're making your world a little easier. Whirlpool makes it easier for you.
Recently, the Chrysler LeBaron GTS challenged 2 of Europe's most celebrated sports sedans to a performance showdown. In critical
tests, LeBaron GTS decisively beat the Audi 5000S and BMW 520AE, and it will keep on beating them.
Tonight on Nightline, financiers have been making hundreds of millions of dollars from corporate takeovers, sometimes just from the threat of them. Tonight, how it affects the economy and you.
As we have pointed out on this broadcast before, this has not been the best of seasons at exclusive Palm Beach in Florida. With the hulk of the freighter Mercedes still firmly beached, ruining the sea view for some, guess what showed up to swim around the freighter? You can't see them too easily, but maybe you can. Those are sharks. Bathers are advised to use extreme caution. Finally tonight, the lure of California. Ask Californians about their way of living and you will hear about the climate, the laid-back living style. They say that just about everybody in the nation wants to live there. They say. As ABC's Judd Rose reports, however, not necessarily.
If the town of New Pine Creek doesn't ring a bell, don't worry. There's not much there outsiders would notice. But to a few hundred people, it's home. They're proud of their hometown and especially their home state.
I am very proud of being an Oregonian. And I have no desire to change. If I had wanted to be something else, I'd have bought property on that side of the line.
That side of the line is California. The state border runs right through the center of town, giving New Pine Creek sort of a split personality. California has the liquor store, the tavern, trading post, market, gas station, and school. The post office, church, fire department, town hall, they're in Oregon, along with the general store, which offers Californian sunglasses, styled in Europe. Wait, it gets worse. If you shop here on the Oregon side, you don't pay any sales tax. But if you live there on the California side, you don't pay as much property tax. Of course, if you live on the California side, you still have an Oregon mailing address, and try explaining that to the tax people. But all that could change if Oregon loses New Pine Creek altogether.
It's been this way for 100 years, probably, at least. Now, why? Do they want to make a big mess?
Because California officials say someone goofed 117 years ago. They say the state border is way off, a half-mile off where it hits New Pine Creek. They want to redraw the border, moving the town into California and extending the line miles out into the Pacific.
Of course, there are 30,000 acres sitting out there in the ocean that, if there was oil discovered or minerals, well, naturally, it would become very valuable.
Officials from both states met and failed to settle the dispute, so now there's talk of a summit between governors. But California legal officials say the U.S. Supreme Court should define the border. Oregon's governor says, go ahead, go to court. He's already drawn the line.
I don't see any need at all to change the borders between California and Oregon. None.
I'll put a for sale sign on my place if they'd asked, if it becomes California. I've been an Oregonian all my life, and I'm not going to change.
So for now, whichever state they live in, everyone here is bordering on a state of confusion. Judd Rose, ABC News, New Pine Creek, Oregon.
And that's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. For everyone at ABC News, good night.
It's an incredible night of action and adventure. First, can Hardcastle and McCormick get out of here! Stop Nazi killers from claiming a buried treasure? Then, Clint Eastwood gambles with his life when he runs the gauntlet. All starting at 8, 7 Central.
Tonight. When he's finally fixed the muffler, when she's finally learned the game, when you've done a little something that makes you feel ashamed, that's when you should send the Tickler bouquet from Emma's Flowers. It's a fun bouquet of fresh flowers featuring its own special tickler, and it can help you say, thanks for the peace and quiet. Congrats on scoring big. Sorry about the bad break. Just call or stop by Emma's Flowers. After all, everyone could use a little tickle now and then.
Save during Winn-Dixie's